The World Cup draw, needlessly drawn out. I mean, it was borderline boring. Now official. An easy path for Team USA, and President Trump gets a peace trophy. After years of conspiracy theories and false leads on the identity of the Capitol Hill pipe bomb suspect, a twist. The man in custody, Trump supporter. A CDC vaccine advisory panel turns away from current hepatitis B recommendations for newborns. A top GOP senator calls it a mistake, one that he said will make the nation sicker. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Let me welcome you to the Takeout. 104 Super Bowls in 1 month. That is how, with characteristic grandiosity, Gianni Infantino, head of the World Cup's governing body, that's FIFA, described the sporting spectacle descending on North America next summer. FIFA, you see, regards each World Cup match as the equivalent of a Super Bowl, so much so that today's draw, carried out here in Washington, D.C., came with it the requirement that the game be referred to exclusively as football, not soccer. We, of course, have our own football and our own Super Bowl. But the World Cup eclipses that event by several orders of magnitude. The most watched Super Bowl ever, that we are told was in 2024, drew a global TV audience of more than 250 million. Most recent World Cup final, that was in 2022, drew a global TV audience of 1.5 billion. President Trump, never shy about tracking TV ratings and audiences, has hugged the World Cup tightly, quite literally. But with his restrictive immigration policies and federalized crime crackdowns lurking over the World Cup sporting shoulders, Infantino, as head of FIFA, has showered Trump with flattery and with praise. And that was capped off today with the first ever FIFA Peace Prize awarded to Trump. There did not appear to be any other contenders. Now, economically speaking, the World Cup, according to FIFA, could pour more than $40 billion into the U.S. economy. 11 U.S. cities will host 78 matches and attract, therefore, hundreds of thousands of visitors from around the world. Whatever you think of the World Cup, it is an economic, cultural, sporting, and political juggernaut. And it is all coming to America as this nation, mid-tournament, will officially celebrate its 250th birthday. And as today's draw demonstrated, it was closed out by the Village people, in case you were curious, made vivid. The World Cup is coming to North America. Matches will be played in the United States, Mexico, and Canada, but it will undisputably be an American, and by that we mean Trumpian event. Whatever the results on the pitch, Trump's presence and how the nation and the world absorb it will be ever present. And with that, we begin with Weijia Jiang in the North Lawn of the White House. Weij?
Major, you said it. It is going to be a Trumpian event, which is exactly why the kickoff today, the FIFA draw, was very Trumpian, and all the flares that the organization added. Not only the Village people, the president also got a chance to hear from his favorite opera singer, Andrea Bocelli. And, as you mentioned, he received that inaugural Peace Prize. Now, remember, the president talks a lot about how he did not receive the Nobel Peace Prize this year, even though he claims he has ended so many wars. And the president of FIFA alluded to that, talking about how much the president has done to bring world peace. And the president called it one of the greatest honors of his life. To your point about football versus soccer, the president actually waded into this potentially fiery territory, Major. He said the NFL might have to figure something else out because obviously this sport, what we were there to celebrate today, soccer, should be called football.
And Weijia, just to remind the audience, FIFA is known for a lot of things, being the governing body for world football and the World Cup, but also it has a very long and tortured history of corruption.
It does, Major, and that obviously was not something that was brought to light today because they were the visitors, they were the guests of President Trump at the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts. And so that was the focus today. And, you know, I haven't even heard anyone mention, at least here at the White House, which for obvious reasons, about that torrid history that you bring up, Major. But certainly that is the undercurrent as we prepare as a country, along with Canada and Mexico, to host next year's World Cup.
So the leaders of Canada and Mexico were also participants today. Were there sideline conversations with Claudia Sheinbaum and Mark Carney?
Well, during the entire draw, Major, the three leaders were seated together, and you could see on the camera that they were mingling, that they were chit-chatting, but they did have an actual meeting after that to talk about trade. It was just this week, Major, that the president railed against the USMCA, which is the trade deal between the three countries, and said he might let it expire in about a year and then have separate trade deals with Canada and Mexico. And he once again went after both countries for taking advantage of the U.S. in the president's view. And so it has already been a very tumultuous ride with these two countries in terms of tariffs and reciprocal tariffs. But they did have a chance to sit down and talk about that, in addition to all the football fun today.
Quick reminder, the USMCA negotiated under President Trump. Weijia Jiang.
President Trump.
North lawn of the White House. Thank you so very much. A judge ordered that the man accused of planting pipe bombs placed outside the Democratic and Republican National Committee headquarters in 2021 remain behind bars. Brian Cole Jr. currently facing several federal charges, among them attempted malicious destruction by fire and explosives. We also know now that the 30-year-old Virginia man is a Trump supporter. CBS News Justice correspondent Scott McFarland joins me now. Scott, what else do we know?
I'm going to bring out some math on a Friday.
Very good.
There are three things we've long wanted to know about this mystery, which has been going on for 5 years. Three things are: who did it, why, and what connection did this have to the insurrection? We finished the week knowing only one thing that the FBI suspects. They suspect it's Brian Cole, 30 years old, bail bondsman employee from Woodbridge, Virginia, which on a good day is about an hour's drive from Washington, D.C., about 25 miles south. But the Department of Justice has not specified any motive here. Why would this person do this historic and horrific thing? And what did this have to do with the Capitol riot, for which it played such a big role? Because you'll recall, Major, police were unequivocal. Those bombs were discovered just as the riotous mob was approaching. It distracted police and gave the rioters a wider berth to penetrate the Capitol and unleash hell.
Do we know anything about Brian Cole Jr.'s attitude about the 2020 election?
Two sources familiar with the matter, speaking with CBS News, say investigators suspect he is a Trump supporter. A Trump supporter in that era, in January 2021.
And in that context, very definite attitudes about the 2020 election, and they were not favorable.
That's right. But we tried to ask the Attorney General about the connections to January 6th. The Department of Justice would not take our question. The Department of Justice has made no allegations in their charging documents at all about motive. But we do know that Cole's been talking with investigators for several hours. He now has a lawyer. We'll see if that changes, but they've been saying something. We didn't get a good sense of that from his preliminary hearing today.
Scott, the nation has been justifiably curious about Trump Justice Department efforts to prosecute the sitting Attorney General of New York, Letitia James. There were developments there late yesterday.
They presented to the grand jury a case against Letitia James, and the grand jury said no. No indictment did not hit the threshold the grand jury was looking for. That sounds basic. That sounds like what grand juries do, but grand juries don't do that very often. That's an exception to the rule, to put it mildly. And grand juries tend to be near 100% approving of what prosecutors present. So something is there that was problematic. Doesn't mean the Department of Justice won't try again and try again soon.
Scott McFarland, as always, thank you very much. The CDC Vaccine Advisory Panel voted today to stop recommending newborns receive their first dose of the hepatitis B vaccine within 24 hours of birth. That recommendation stood for more than 30 years. The panel now says parents should wait until the child is 2 months old if the mother tested negative for the virus. Joining me now, CBS News Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. John LaPook. Dr. LaPook, I want to read for our audience something that Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican from Louisiana, said in reaction to this. I want to have the control room bring this up. As a liver doctor who has treated patients with hepatitis B for decades, this change to the vaccine schedule is a mistake. The hepatitis B vaccine is safe and effective. Your other thoughts, Dr. LaPook?
Well, you mentioned that Senator Cassidy came out with a strong statement. He is a gastroenterologist, as am I. And I have to tell you, people may not know because, of course, the vaccine's been very effective. And a lot of times people have hepatitis B, they don't even realize it about at least half of the time. There are these chronic carriers. But I have been by the bedside of people as they are dying from this brutal infection, okay? You die from liver failure, you die from liver cancer, and I hate to be graphic, but one of the complications is something called esophageal varices, where the veins sort of back up into the throat and you vomit up blood. And I've had people bleed out and die in front of me. That's the context where in 1981, just as I was sort of in the middle of my training, this vaccine came out. It was a miracle. And if you look over the next years, the number of people who had hepatitis B chronically fell in half from about 1.2 million to about 660,000. And I should say that even though children, babies, the most common cause of getting it is from an infected mother, and then during childbirth they're infected, you can get it later on from household context, just from contact. It's a very hardy virus. It's in secretions of all kinds, and just close contact with a grandparent or a caregiver can actually pass on this virus.
Dr. LaPook, quickly, can the CDC ignore this? And if so, what effect does that have on insurers or others downstream?
Well, there was a statement today saying that insurance is not going to be affected. That remains to be seen. I have to say that the bigger discussion here really is about the role of public health. I just got off the phone with an infectious diseases expert who used to be in public health on the federal level, and who told me, look, it's a good idea to review the data out there periodically. This has been done with this vaccine, and there's no new signal of safety or of a problem. It's very effective. And I think when you listen to the conversation this morning, as I did, it was contentious. There's a lot of back and forth. And sort of behind it was the issue of what is the role of public health? And the role of public health is really to look at the 200 million people, hundreds of millions of people, and give advice for everybody, okay, based on the best available science. If on top of that, after that, people want to make individual decisions after discussion with their healthcare provider, fine. But I think the point is made by a lot of people I've spoken to is you don't handicap the advice because you're afraid that people won't follow it because of their individual preferences. You give the best possible advice, and that's your advice. And then after that, if people want to make their own informed choices, then you go for it.
Dr. John LaPook, as always, thank you very much.
Okay.
Pentagon confirms that 4 people were killed on Thursday in the United States military's latest strike on a suspected drug boat. U.S. Southern Command released this video of the attack in the Eastern Pacific. This was the first known strike since November 15th, bringing the death toll to at least 87. CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata joins me here now. Charlie, what else do we know?
Well, we know that this is the first strike that we've seen in 3 weeks, and that's notable because when Operation Southern Spear first began, September 2nd, there was a rate where we were seeing them most in the Caribbean, one every couple of days. So it raises a curiosity as to why this has happened now. Again, pointing out that it happened in the Eastern Pacific for narco-terrorists. Once again, no evidence given on what was on those boats, what was on that boat, who was on that boat, where it was headed.
And for the audience's benefit, Charlie, how are these being conducted? Is this drone or is this some other kind of aerial asset?
Okay, it's a very good question. I just came back from Puerto Rico, from that region, okay? So I saw Reaper drones, and they're armed with Hellfire missiles. So that can be assumed, especially for that September 2nd, that's likely to be a Hellfire missile, likely to be run by Special Operations Command down there. However, there are F-35s in the region. There are now F-18s on top of the Ford carrier group. Any number of strike carriers that can be, even gunships can be brought in to take out these boats. So there are several options, but eyeballing it from the video and then hearing some of the testimony yesterday from General Mitch Bradley, that was a Reaper drone, several strikes on the same craft.
You mentioned the carrier strike force, Gerald R. Ford. Mm-hmm. As I understand it, Charlie, we have about 15,000 Marines and Navy personnel in the region. And part of that is supplied through Trinidad and Tobago and Puerto Rico, as I understand it. Yep. The duration of that, 4 to 6 months max?
Well, so in Puerto Rico itself, it has essentially become a forward operating base. I saw it for myself. They are fortifying the area, the F-35s that are taking off. The Gerald R. Ford, where that becomes max capacity, is that was already deployed. It had been deployed since June. So even though it just entered what the military calls the AOR, air responsibility. It had been out in Europe. And that kind of max capacity, you are looking at 6-7 months. And I'll tell you, Major, there'll be a lot of sailors on board that want to be home for Christmas. So it's not entirely unlimited, but you would have to see an extension. That's going to happen within the next couple of weeks if that's ordered.
Something to watch for about what future intentions in that region very well might be. Charlie Daggett, as always, a pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Major.
Coming up, the fight over extending Obamacare tax credits. What Senate Democrats intend to bring to the Senate floor next week. Plus, the path to soccer immortality via the World Cup. Former MLS player and soccer analyst will join me to discuss today's FIFA World Cup draw. What U.S. Team USA's, I will get that out, chances are. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back to The Takeout. In 2023, 2 IRS employees came forward and alleged that the Justice Department was improperly handling the tax fraud case against Hunter Biden, son of President Joe Biden. They have a new book out. It's called The Whistleblowers versus the Big Guy: 2 special agents, the Biden crime family, and a corrupt bureaucracy. Here is some of whistleblower Joseph Ziegler's testimony before Congress.
In early August of 2022, federal prosecutors from the Department of Justice Tax Division drafted a 99-page memorandum. In so, they were recommending for approval felony and misdemeanor charges for the 2017, 18, and 19 tax years. That did not happen here, and I am not sure why.
Mr. Ziegler joins me now from Atlanta. He now works, by the way, in Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's office as a senior advisor for IRS reform. Mr. Ziegler, it's good to have you with us. The title of the book, The Big Guy. For my audience who may not have followed all of this, who is the big guy, and why do you refer to it as the Biden crime family?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. That's a really great question. So the big guy, obviously from the testimony that we provided, the big guy is Joe Biden. And why we called it the crime family, I think we wanted to capture kind of what Gary and I went through in becoming whistleblowers. It's kind of the story of David and Goliath, 2 measly IRS employees who went up against the Biden family, the White House, Department of Justice, and the IRS. And in the end, we won. We were vindicated. We reached settlements with the Department of Justice and the IRS. We reached, if you know, from Joe Biden had to pardon his son. He was charged with everything that we had brought forward. So it is clear that we are vindicated in everything that we had done. And I mean, for not a lot of whistleblowers experience this in the victory of, hey, they've achieved what they were ultimately trying to achieve. But we're really on the other side of this right now.
And Mr. Ziegler, remind my audience, if you had not spoken up, something else would have occurred, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This entire case, everything would have been swept under the rug. So when I was thrown off the investigation, they would have just proceeded on with 2 misdemeanor tax charges, not treating Hunter Biden like every other taxpayer. They would have gotten this, most likely this plea deal through that judge, and then this would have never seen the light of day.
What is your role now with Treasury Secretary Bessent? Because if there's anything that most Americans recoil from, it's the idea that the IRS could be used against them or be used to look away from some fat cats or some people with connections.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at what we went through. We were up against a mountain, and in our new role, or in my, well, I've been in it for quite some time, but in the senior advisor role, we're working on IRS reform, which includes de-weaponizing the IRS. And I mean, it's a lot of work, and who better to do it than someone that experienced such weaponization of the IRS and DOJ under the Biden administration.
In that terminology, weaponization, is it singularly directed at one kind of Americans or one part of the political spectrum, in your experience?
Well, I think it's very important to have a fair and equitable tax system. We have to treat taxpayers the same. And in the case of Hunter Biden, in the case that I was working, we were not treating him like we would any other taxpayer. So in order to de-weaponize, you have to essentially look at the breadth of taxpayers and hold everyone accountable that should be held accountable the same that you would anyone else, despite what their last name is.
And in terms of enforcement, those who are wealthy tend to invest in accountants and tax experts to help them legally work their way around the system. There's nothing you as an investigator can do about that. You're talking about something else, correct?
Yeah, it's more of, is this a systemic problem, or is it a more of a person by person bias that they might have against one person or one group of people? And I mean, we need to, majority of IRS employees are great people, and we know that we need to stay apolitical. And I think it's prudent to a voluntary tax compliance system that there are safeguards. Essentially, if you do something wrong, but you willfully do that wrong and you commit a crime, you should be held accountable for that. And that's what we have brought up with Hunter Biden.
And the obviousness of the evidence, to your way of thinking, in Hunter Biden was so clear that what happened to you could not have happened for any other reason other than bias in favor of Hunter Biden. Do I hear you correctly?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was even bigger than that. It was, we couldn't follow leads that led to Joe Biden. We couldn't ask normal investigative questions that would have led to other members of the Biden family. I couldn't interview the Biden, some of the adult children of the Biden family. So it was things that didn't make any sense. And I think that they were concerned about the optics of how it might look if we were to go down certain avenues or routes. And to look at the actual tax crimes, I mean, there were deductions for, and this was in his actual indictment that he pled guilty on, there was a deduction for $10,000 paid for a sex club that he wrote was a golf membership. I've never seen anywhere where you're allowed to do that. But I think what this case elevated to was that there was this misconduct that was so egregious that if you were any other taxpayer, we would have thrown the book at you.
Joseph Ziegler from Atlanta, congratulations on the book. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Coming up, a vote to extend Obamacare tax credits for 3 years. That's likely coming to the Senate floor next week. We will bring in our political panel to discuss that and many other events like redistricting that keeps going round and round next year on the Takeout. Welcome back to the Takeout. Senate's expected to vote next week. Not sure it's going to pass anything, but it's going to vote on legislation to extend Obamacare tax credits for 3 years. That is a Democratic maneuver. Here is Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer talking about it.
Republicans caused this problem. They knew this cliff was coming and would only make the pain worse for Americans, yet they've chosen to do nothing, absolutely nothing. They are nowhere. They don't even have a proposal.
I want to bring in our political panel, Democratic strategist Marielle Saez, who served as director of broadcast media for the Biden administration, Republican strategist Matt Gorman, friend of the show, served as senior advisor for Tim Scott's presidential campaign. All right, what he's referring to, Chuck Schumer, the cliff is these expire December 31st. And there doesn't seem to be a path, Matt, for Republicans to do anything about it.
Yeah. We caused this problem, yet they passed the law. They created the subsidies.
Meaning the Democrats.
Yes, and the Democrats created the cliff over the subsidies, but this is our problem. So glad Chuck and his...
Very quick reminder to the audience. These were not originally a part of Obamacare.
No.
They were added during COVID, extended as a part of the Inflation Reduction Act. So the Democrats created them, set the expiration date of December 31st of this year.
Yes, exactly. But, you know,
you're in charge, and the premiums will go up if they expire.
Under us, because it shows what a terrible law Obamacare is. But regardless, look, I don't think you're going to see much movement on this. Democrats are going to use this as a messaging exercise. Chuck Schumer, and what I believe will probably be his final Senate term, will try and push this through. But the real question is whether or not Trump feels the need to negotiate with Democrats on this at all. 3 years is a non-starter, maybe one. But again, Democrats own this.
Marielle, your perspective.
Look, Major, we're talking about healthcare increases that are not minuscule. We're talking about healthcare premiums going from $200 to $300 to $500, $600 per month. That's on top of rising utility costs, housing costs going up, grocery costs going up. And so Republicans have a choice. They can either continue to do nothing about the cost of living crisis that we're in right now, or they can vote with Democrats to extend these subsidies, bring down costs for healthcare, and ensure that 22 million Americans don't see that substantial increase.
Matt said 1 year. If that were presented as something the president would sign, do you think Democrats would go for that?
Look, Democrats have been fighting tooth and nail to get any extension of this done, right? 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. And Republicans have a choice. They control all levers of government. They, with their one big beautiful bill,
Right.
they set up a situation. They had a choice then to extend. They chose not to.
But you know what I'm driving at.
And
If
there needs
Chuck
to be action.
Schumer agreed to a 1 year, would he face criticism from the progressive left for caving in?
Look, this needs to be addressed. 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. The longer that we can give Americans certainty, the better. But right now, they're facing up to 600% increase in just a few weeks from now, and Republicans have done nothing.
Matt, you talked to a lot of folks around town who are close to the White House. Do you think 1 year is something that they're giving serious consideration to?
Only if Trump signs off on it, right? If this is something that percolates from, say, House moderates or the Problem Solvers Caucus, it'd be a lot harder to sell on the right flank of both the House and the Senate, and even the White House. It has to come top down.
I'm extremely displeased with the Supreme Court, not for anything it's ruled, but because it ruled last night on Texas redistricting after the show went off the air. Come on, hit send a little bit earlier, okay? That would help us. And essentially said the Texas redrawn map is okay because it is nakedly partisan. And the Supreme Court said nakedly partisan congressional redistricting constitutional.
Yes, exactly. And look,
so that means California should be okay too.
I think what you're going to see is the differences.
Right, Marielle? She does not.
Look, I think Republicans have reconciled that you're going to get 5 for 5. Like, that's the trade that's going to happen. Now, look, the minutia on this is that how the actual California thing came about is what they're arguing. But regardless, in effect, it's going to be 5 in California.
And look, the California one went to the voters.
Exactly.
They approved it, so that should give it even more.
But that's not even actually what you're likely to see
protection legally
in the spring, I think, is there will be parts of the Voting Rights Act that will be struck down that will open up and unlock seats in the Deep South for Republicans: Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and South Carolina.
That's separate from redistricting is so much more important to watch.
Yes.
Any thoughts on that, Mary?
Yeah, of course. Look, what happened with the Texas redistricting ruling really fundamentally does two things. One, it allows Republicans to avoid accountability on this issue of affordability, right? They are running on a deeply unpopular agenda that is raising costs for Americans. And what Texas Republicans did was essentially redraw a map so that they don't have to be held accountable for what's happening in Congress and throughout the country on rising costs. Second, we're going to see Black and brown voters, whether it's in Texas or in other Republican states where redistricting, Trump is having his way with redistricting, who are going to be disenfranchised by these decisions. So it's deeply concerning, certainly, and I think you're going to see Democrats fight back, not just on the redistricting issue, but also running campaigns to hold those Republicans accountable.
Let's stay in Texas because our Ed O'Keefe, trusted colleague of ours, reports that Jasmine Crockett, member of the House, calling around, may jump into the Senate Democratic primary. Your response to that?
Look, I mean, she's a dynamic member. And so I think you're going to see a number of candidates really get into this race and put forward their best platform on taking on this administration, holding Trump accountable, and bringing down costs for Americans.
Matt, you were like this.
You won't endorse Jasmine, but I will. Run, Jasmine, run.
Why?
Because I'll be honest, it's a mess on our side. We have a very messy primary, 3 ways. Wesley Hunt just got in. I think he could emerge.
John Cornyn
as well, obviously the incumbent senator.
And the Attorney General.
Ken Paxton. Watch Wesley Hunt that race. He could emerge if something happens to Cornyn or if Ken Paxton gets strong. But, of course, a mess on our side, a mess on their side.
You want more Democrats in that race?
More the merrier, man.
Why?
Because Jasmine is absolutely unpalatable, even against the Ken Paxton in the state of Texas. Colin Alvarez won before. I'm surprised Beto doesn't get in. But Jasmine is palatably unpalatable. All
right, we're going to end on this. I don't know what to say about this. It was brought up on our 11 o'clock meeting. It's a picture of Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. Show the picture. For some reason, control room, show the picture, please, if you have it. There it is. For some reason, that particular posture, the sitting governor of California, has attracted endless online criticism and evaluation. Marielle, what?
Look, I think Republicans may be criticizing the way the governor's sitting because they're mad about what he had to say. I mean, he actually went into this DealBook interview and made some really, really poignant points about the concentration of wealth in this country, income inequality, how farmers, small businesses, consumers are all getting the short end of the stick.
He's talking to his base, the DealBook interview, but I don't know how does an ankle move that way? It's all very questionable to me.
Questionable.
Yeah.
That's all you have to say.
That's all I got.
Okay. I don't understand it. I never will. Marielle Saez, Matt Gorman, thank you so much. Supreme Court says it will weigh in on President Trump's executive order aimed at limiting birthright citizenship. What potential arguments might be made? Next, here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Thanks for hanging out with us. Here's a look at what else we and now you are watching this evening. There was announced today a very large corporate deal. Netflix, I bet you've heard of it, says it is buying Warner Brothers for the price tag of $82.7 billion. This would, if approved, merge the two largest streaming services in the world. Now, there is a lot to go before this deal closes. One of the things that has to happen is Warner Brothers Discovery would have to complete its spin-off of Discovery Global. There are also a lot of regulatory considerations the Trump Justice Department and the FCC will consider. Some of that, most of it, should play out next year. Lots of implications. There's also a development today in the Epstein files curiosity. A Florida district judge has ordered the release of transcripts from a 2006 grand jury sex trafficking investigation into Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. The judge says the recently passed law signed by President Trump to release Epstein files information overrides existing federal rules that prohibit the release of matters presented before a grand jury. The Justice Department has requested the unsealing of documents from a total of 3 separate Epstein-related cases. The Supreme Court said it will decide if President Trump can limit the constitutional right to citizenship at birth. President Trump, you might remember, issued an order at the start of his second term to eliminate the law which automatically grants citizenship to anyone born in the United States. Birthright citizenship has long been understood to be required under the 14th Amendment. I want to bring in CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson for her analysis. Jessica, I'm always grateful to have you in moments like this. Explain for the audience what is and what the Trump administration has said ought to be.
So what currently is the 14th Amendment that we've understood for more than 100 years, well over 100 years, to say that it doesn't matter what the status of your parents are. If you're born in this country, then you are a citizen of this country. That particular view was supported by an 1868 case and by subsequent congressional statutes. So we have, ever since the 14th Amendment was ratified after the Civil War, understood that the only question really is, are you born in this country? And with the caveat of maybe if your parents, in fact, serve as foreign consulates, for instance. But the question now is whether or not the president can, by executive order, undermine that understanding. The Supreme Court's going to take up this case. I think this was always destined for the court. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think this is maybe 8-1, 7-2, that no, the president cannot do this.
And do you think, Jessica, that's why the court took it? Because as you well laid out, we have precedent and statute. Do you think the court wanted to make an affirmative declaration that those are the governing elements of this question?
Or at least 4 members of the court. As you know, and you're a student of the court as well, all it takes in order to decide to take a case is 4 votes. And so I think there easily could have been 4 to say the president has tried to change the understanding of the Constitution by executive order. We should be clear that there has been no court that has agreed that he can do that. This executive order, which I believe was signed on the first day of his presidency, never went into effect. But yes, to your question, I think this is one of those big constitutional questions that, generally speaking, the Supreme Court is the final word.
And Jessica, just for the sake of argument, what would American law and immigration policy look like if the Trump perspective were to prevail?
Great question. So, if the Trump perspective prevails, then I think what you see is, frankly, in the short term, an administrative mess in the sense of trying to figure out who is a citizen and who is not. What is the status of newborn's parents? Can you prove that when you go into, I mean, this is a bit of an exaggeration, but can you prove when you go into labor and delivery that in fact both parents are US citizens or have legal status? With respect to how this would affect other areas of the law, what would be the ripple effect? I mean, it really would be that there would be fewer citizens. And I think, again, the big short term impact would be a lot of paperwork, a lot of sorting, a lot of proof to determine who now falls outside of the protection of the 14th Amendment.
Jessica Levinson, always a pleasure. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
2026 FIFA World Cup draw. It's set. We will break down what Team USA might have to do to get out of the first stage, get into that knockout stage. Also, we'll discuss changes to the tournament's format. That's important. What all this might mean for this big, big spectacle coming our way. That's next here on The Takeout. Welcome back. Welcome to the Conversation Corner. The FIFA World Cup draw wrapped up just hours ago here in the nation's capital. We know now some of the first opponents for Team USA. It all starts with the group stage, round-robin tournament to make it to the knockout bracket. To make it there, the United States will have to get past Australia, Paraguay, and the winner of a European playoff. That final team will either be Turkey, Romania, Slovakia, or Kosovo. Jamie Watson joins us now from Chase Stadium in Fort Lauderdale, the site of tomorrow's MLS Cup final. He's a former professional soccer player and now a soccer analyst, although we were told today that we have to call it football forever in America. We can't call it soccer anymore. It's great to have you with us. Talk about the draw for Team USA.
Major, thank you so much for having me. It was an exciting day with upwards of 1 billion people expected to be watching the final draw globally. And with just 188 short days away from the start of the 2026 FIFA Men's World Cup across Canada, the United States, and Mexico, it was a dream draw for the United States. And two words that really resonated amongst the U.S. men's national team fans that I was in and around in South Florida today was optimism and opportunity. Optimistic that hopefully this group is one that the U.S. men's national team can win. And then there's an opportunity if you get beyond that into the round of 32 to advance and to try to make history for the U.S. men's national team.
For those of my audience who are not well versed in this, who are the monsters in the World Cup in terms of teams that go in with tremendous momentum and are absolute favorites to get to the finals or the semifinals?
It's a great question. First and foremost, none of those favorites are in the U.S. men's national team group. The three that come to mind, France, Argentina, and Spain, those are 1, 2, 3 in the FIFA world rankings. Some of the biggest names in the world. Argentina has Lionel Messi. And when you look at Spain, they've got the likes of Lamine Yamal. France has a whole host of incredible players. This was the top 10. The first 9 were in pot 1 to go along with the 3 host countries, Canada and the U.S. men's national team, along with Mexico. So they avoided those powerhouses in world soccer for now, but that could all change if they make it out of the group stage.
And Jamie, walk my audience through how this World Cup is different in terms of the number of teams that will participate.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. For the first time in the FIFA Men's World Cup history, the group stage is now no longer 32 teams, it's 48 teams. And that provides opportunities for teams like Haiti, ranked 84th in the world, who have not seen the World Cup in 52 years. Or you think of the likes of Suriname, ranked 124th in the FIFA Men's World Rankings. It's something special. It's something unique. Countries around the world will shut down for what I like to call the greatest month every 4 years. And there's more opportunity now for more teams globally to join in the greatest sporting event the world has ever seen.
And Jamie, this is going to be spread out across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. How does that in any way affect how teams prepare? And we're going to learn some important information tomorrow, as I understand it, about where some of the early games will be played.
That's absolutely true. Tomorrow around noon Eastern time, it is expected that all of the locations and kickoff times will be set. So fans looking to get their tickets, you'll know who will be playing in which venues. But you're right, 3 countries, 16 different cities across those 3 countries will host. The likes of the U.S. men's national team will start off on June 12th in Los Angeles against Paraguay, the 39th ranked team in the world. They'll then go up to Seattle a week later to take on Australia at number 26 in the world. And as you mentioned at the top of the segment, they'll have to wait until March 31st to learn their third and final opponent 6 days later back in SoFi. It will be a challenging thing traversing the country back and forth for these teams, but there's no excuses. It's the World's Tournament. There's no such thing as an easy game or an easy schedule, if you will, in this tournament. And it should unfold in fashion in which we'll see some Cinderellas make their names for themselves on the global stage and potentially some heartbreaks for some of the favorites. And it's all going to unfold starting in 188 days, Major.
Jamie, you know what I mean when I say I've got 1 minute left. Tell my audience some names on Team USA and the dynamic of being the home team within the context of World Cup competition.
Pressure's a privilege. And when you're hosting a World Cup, the U.S. men's national team get the opportunity to be able to impress their fans, grab the attention of the viewers that are just starting to be on the fence with soccer, as Major League Soccer, NWSL, which hosted the final here on CBS, all of it is grabbing attention. Now the U.S. men's national team with the likes of Captain Christian Pulisic and starting goalkeeper Matt Freese, they have the opportunity to make the United States fall in love with the U.S. men's national team.
I've heard it said, I believe it to be true, football is life. Jamie Watson coming to us from the MLS final tomorrow. Inter Miami with Lionel Messi. Vancouver Whitecaps, that should be a heck of a game. Enjoy that, Jamie. Thanks for your expertise and joining us. I really appreciate it.
Can't wait to chat with you soon. Thanks, Major.